And who are our scoring panelists on this round?
Your Honor, I'm Dana Mills. I'm a guardian ad litem in Adams and Broomfield.
Dana, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I will say I can only see the bottom half of your face.
Well, you're a lucky woman.
Thank you.
See. Back up here.
That's much better. Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, this is Joel Babcock.
Joel, how are you today?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Good.
Hi, Your Honor. This is Stephanie Williams.
Stephanie, how are you?
Very good. Thank you.
And
Hi,
Margaret?
Your Honor. Hi, Your Honor. Margaret Haywood.
Good to see you. Thank you for participating.
Thank
Just
you.
so you know, my background is that I'm a retired lawyer. I practiced civil litigation for a long time, and I have been doing this mock trial business for, I don't know, a decade at least. So it's a fun competition. It's kind of challenging over the Zoom meeting, but I hope we have a good time.
All right, we're live streaming, so I think we're good to go.
Okay, could we bring in the teams, please? There they are. All right. So we have Team Pam and Team Andy. And Team Pam is representing the plaintiff or the defense.
The defense, Your Honor.
And Team Andy is the plaintiff. And I'm going to ask now, before we get started, to have the scoring panelists look over these faces and see if there's any conflict. Let me know if you see a conflict and want to bring that up. Are we all okay? Yes, nodding heads. All right. Courtroom monitor, could you inform the powers that be that we are good to go here?
Yes, I'm not sure which powers that be you speak of, but as far as I can tell, we're good to go.
Well, the Central Command has asked that we clear ourselves for conflict. So that's either Amy or Ashley, I guess.
Okay, let me see. Give me just a moment. Let me let them know.
Okay, thank you. And I guess as we're waiting for that clearance, I'll just get ourselves going. My name is Randy Livingston. I'm going to be the presiding judge this afternoon for round one of the state mock trial competition. We have 4 scoring panelists whom you see on your screens. I'm going to ask you now, both teams, whether you are ready to proceed to trial.
The defense is ready to proceed.
All right, thank you. Plaintiff, are you ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor, after a couple of preliminary matters.
Well, we'll get to those. Have you given the trial roster to the courtroom monitor for publication to the rest of us?
Yes, Your Honor. Team Pam's put the roster and witness pronouns in the chat.
Okay. I don't have that yet, but let us go forward until we get that. Usually there is filming or video records or audio records of these sessions maintained only by the consent of the teams. With a Zoom conference call, that's a little bit different because teams can surreptitiously record these things on the Zoom. I'm going to ask you that you, each team commit that you not make a video or audio recording of this session unless there has been prior agreement between you. Is that acceptable to you all? All right. Once we get going, there will be no recesses. We will go straight from the beginning to the end, from opening statements through closing arguments with no recesses unless there is a health emergency. And if there is such a health emergency, please let me know as soon as possible so that we can take care of that. I can see that each of you is on a separate camera. Are you in different rooms or are you in the same rooms? Team Pam?
We're in different rooms, Your Honor.
Okay, and Team Andy?
We are in the same room, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay, so they're aware that we have no conflicts and we are good to go. They will be emailing the roster for it to go in for you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are any disputes arising out of this competition due to the rules, those disputes are to be resolved under the rules of the competition, and they must be reported to the Colorado Bar Association, as I hope you've all been informed for resolution. Do we have timers for each team? And who are they?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm a timer.
Who is that? Pam? Timekeeper.
This is
Okay,
Andy.
good. And Andy, you are timekeeper. All right. I don't know. How are you going to publish the times? Are you going to hold up a card or something to the camera so that we can see?
Yes, I do have cards.
Okay. I will be monitoring the time, and compliance with the time requirements provided in the rules will be enforced pretty strictly. So maintain and keep your presentations within the allotted times. At this point, I'm going to swear you all in, even though we're waiting for the trial rosters to be published to us. But all of you team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the participation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Thank you. Witnesses, would you raise your right hands? Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Thank you. We don't have gallery members, except they may be stalking on some delay broadcast, which I don't understand, but we'll forego swearing them and just promise or expect them to behave themselves. Scoring panelists, would you please raise your right hands? Scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? Thank you. And I'm going to try to keep my microphone on mute for as long as possible. I'm having some bathroom renovation done upstairs, and that might cause some thumping. I don't want that to interfere with your presentation. I guess it looks like we have We have a chat from the timekeeper saying that all of our witnesses use she, her pronouns. And while we're waiting for the written trial rosters, why don't each of the teams introduce the attorney members and then the witnesses? So, Team Andy. Would you-
Hello, Your Honor. I am Sophie Harrison, and I'm a plaintiff attorney for Team Andy. I will be directing Dr. Casey Rogers and crossing Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Danielle Jensen. I'm a plaintiff attorney. I will be directing Carson Durst and crossing Blake Dawn-Court and giving the plaintiff opening.
Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm Juliet Jensen. I will be directing Dakota Weirs, crossing Skylar Weirs, and giving the plaintiff's.
All right, thank you. Would you please have your witnesses introduce themselves? Mr. Yoakum, if you're speaking, you are muted.
Good morning, Your Honor. I am Lola Cheney, and I will be portraying the role of Casey Rogers.
Casey Rogers, thank you, Ms. Cheney.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Naftali Sabat, and I'll be playing Carson Durst today.
All right, thank you. And we should have one more. Is that Mr. Yoakum? I'm still not hearing you.
I apologize, Your Honor. Andrew is figuring out technical difficulties at the moment. Is it all right if he walks over to another person's computer to introduce himself?
That's certainly all right, yes. We're going to have to work with these challenges.
Hello, I am Andy Yoakum, and I will be playing Dakota Weirs in this case.
All right, Mr. Yoakum, thank you. Dakota Weir. Good. All right. Team Pam.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Lydia Brisky, and I, alongside my co-counsel, represent the defense. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Granted.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ainsley Bidgood, and I will be presenting the opening statement.
I'm sorry, could you raise your hand? I didn't see you when you were, there you are, okay.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Emma Senishin, and I will be making the closing argument.
Thank you. Team Pam, would you have your witnesses introduce themselves, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Perry, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate Sutherland, and I'm Skylar Weirs.
Good afternoon. My name is Saffron Bennett Spurlock, and I am Blake Dawn-Court.
Thank you. Now, have any of the scoring panelists received a trial roster? Because I have not.
I have for Team Pam, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I did receive one via email from Ashley of the Colorado Bar Association. It was to you, myself, Dana Mills, and Joel.
All right, on email. Okay, I see it. Thank you.
Yes.
I did not receive that.
You may look at your spam roster, sad though that may be.
Stephanie, I don't see you addressed on the email. If you want to throw your email in the chat, I don't know if this is appropriate, but if you want to throw your email in the chat, I can forward this to you.
Thank you, Margaret. I'll do that.
Okay, are we all set? All right. Team Andy, would you make your opening statement, please?
Your Honor, if we may.
If before we do scoring panelists, would you turn off your camera so we can focus on who is speaking? Thank you.
Your Honor, before we begin, if we may address a couple of pretrial matters.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Your Honor, I would ask that the judge and jury be aware of the stipulated facts, which are that all signatures in the paperwork are valid and that the chain of custody is not in dispute for evidence.
That is correct.
The defense would also like to make sure that you, the jury, witnesses, and opposing counsel would be allowed to look at unaltered exhibit notebooks when entering exhibits into evidence in order to speed up the flow of the trial and avoid technical difficulties that may come along with screen sharing exhibits. So rather than screen sharing an exhibit to enter it, we would just work under the assumption that everyone can consult their own exhibit books.
Okay, well, let me bring back the scoring panelists and ask whether each of the scoring panelists has a, I think it's called the case problem, which contains the exhibits.
I do, Your Honor.
All right.
I do, Your Honor.
I do as
Stephanie,
well.
Dana, okay, I think we're all set with that, and that is granted. Go ahead.
Thank you. And on top of that, finally, we would also ask that any remaining time in the plaintiff's closing be reserved for rebuttal.
That is granted.
Thank you, Your Honor. That is all.
Okay, does Team Pam have any additional preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor, just one preliminary matter at this time. Our team was intending to screen share the exhibits on the onset of questioning and ask that the jury don't constructively read it into the record until you enter it. Would it be okay for Team Pam to screen share exhibits?
If that's the way you practiced it and it's convenient for you, that's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no further housekeeping matters at this time.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, plaintiffs, would you make your opening statement, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here today because Lush Fertilizer was deceitful, greedy, and negligent. Because Lush Fertilizer was deceitful, our client, Dakota Weir's life has been completely, irreversibly altered for the worse. Lush was greedy, so Dakota Weir's developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Truffaut, a bonding agent created by Lush Fertilizer, has torn Dakota Weir's dream from him. Lush was negligent, so Dakota Weir's will never have his dream realized of playing piano at Juilliard. We are here because Dakota Weir's cannot have his life back. And because Lush was negligent, the same fate could fall upon others. Ladies and gentlemen, the definition of negligence is failure to exercise reasonable care resulting in the damage or injury of another. We will show you that Lush Fertilizer manufactured a product containing Truffaut. We will show you that the defendant was negligent by failing to prevent unreasonable risk to those who would reasonably use their product. We will show you that Dakota Weir's is someone who would reasonably use their product. And we will show you that the harm that came to Dakota Weir's resulted from the negligence of Lush Fertilizer. Today, you will hear the testimony of a young man whose entire future was planned around his passion, piano, and how it was torn away from him. You will hear that in a job where he would reasonably be expected to use such a product, Dakota Weir's was not able to know the full extent of the dangers of Truffaut in his landscaping work. Lush was too greedy to issue a proper warning. You will hear how Dakota Weirs, a healthy, active, ambitious member of his community, developed a serious disease that we will prove could only have been caused by his use of Lush fertilizer. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is an environmentally developed disease. Dakota Weirs and his twin lived an almost identical life. The only difference was Truffaut, and yet Dakota Weir's twin did not develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dakota Weirs developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because Lush was deceitful. Today you will hear Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush Fertilizer, testify that the company knew the risks of Truffaut. Not only were they aware, but extensive studies were done on the matter, and a link specifically to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was found. But Lush was too greedy. They knew there was a risk, they knew how to prevent it, but they wouldn't spend the money. You will hear Dr. Casey Rogers, a scientist with extensive background in horticulture and who studies the harmful effects of drugs on the human body, state that Truffaut is not safe. Dr. Rogers will explain that those exposed to Truffaut, like Dakota Weirs, are 10 times more likely to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lush was too negligent to do anything about this. You will hear how Blake Johncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, knew that in using Truffaut, they were putting their users at risk. We will show that Truffaut does cause cancer and that the science says so. Lush will try to claim that by baking the fertilizer to prevent its causing cancer, Blake Johncourt would have been going above and beyond. But it was never a matter of going above and beyond. It was a matter of profit. The defense will call Skylar Weirs, Dakota Weir's own twin, who has taken a stand against him because of familial prejudice. They will try to tell you that Skylar Weirs, with a gambling problem and a job writing about flat earthers and aliens, knows that Truffaut is safe. But we will show that Truffaut is not safe and that it caused Mr. Weir's cancer. You will also hear how Skylar's bad relationship with their brother has biased them. The defense will finally call Dr. Devin Williams, whose sole job was to prevent harm from coming to Lush's users, and how they utterly failed because Lush was too greedy to bake the fertilizer. Ladies and gentlemen, today you will hear how Lush was deceitful, how Lush was greedy, how Lush was negligent. If Lush cared, Dakota Weirs would not be sick. He would not have lost all but his life. He would be performing at Juilliard, living his dream. Because Lush was deceitful, because Lush doesn't care, we are here today. He is here today. Ladies and gentlemen, Dakota Weirs deserves compensation for the pain Lush has caused him, the pain he will have to live with for the rest of his life, because Lush was deceitful, greedy, and negligent. Thank you.
Thank you. Team Pam, your opening statement, please.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Members of the jury, we are here today because Lush Fertilizer is being wrongfully sued by Dakota Weirs. They claim that a compound in Lush's fertilizer, Truffaut, caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But the facts and evidence presented today will show you that this is simply wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very emotional case, but it is your job to consider the facts and evidence. Today, you will hear the plaintiff present the wrong science and accuse the wrong defendant. So you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, must give the right answer. Wrong science, wrong defendant, right answer. The plaintiff will present science in an effort to support their claim that Truffaut causes cancer. Their claim entirely depends on an inconclusive test conducted by Casey Rogers. Casey Rogers herself will testify that this study has never been replicated, nor has it been peer-reviewed. Ladies and gentlemen, we have no way of knowing whether the same conclusions would be reached if this study were replicated. For all we know, she got lucky. That's the wrong science. Today, you will hear my co-counsel and I present to you the right science. You will hear from Dr. Devin Williams, who will testify that her labs found no evidence that suggested that the use of Truffaut causes cancer. You will also hear from Skylar Weirs, who will testify that Truffaut contains no carcinogenic ingredients and that there are no credible studies showing a direct correlation between Drufo and cancer. Finally, Blake Doncourt will testify that Lush took all necessary precautions to eliminate all reasonable risk. That's the right science. Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush, will try to claim that Lush could have done more to ensure the safety of its users. They will also try to claim that Lush manipulated data and failed to evaluate all sources of evidence. But you will see today that this is not true. Lush used the right science in all steps of the production of Drufo. They conducted numerous safety tests and put all necessary recommendations on packaging. The plaintiff will claim that Lush fertilizer is unsafe because they do not bake their product. But you will see today that they don't bake their product because Lush fertilizer is safe without baking. As well as making claims based on the wrong science, Dakota Weirs is suing the wrong defendant. There is an array of unaccounted for factors. Today you will hear Dakota testify to using many different products. We can't even be sure that a fertilizer is at fault. For all we know, it could have been a household cleaning product. By the end of today's trial, it will be apparent that the plaintiff has failed to meet its burden of proof. They must prove by a preponderance of the evidence every element of the claim of negligence. Through our science, it will be clear that Lush exercised reasonable care to prevent its users from an unreasonable risk of harm. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very emotional case, but it is your job to consider the facts and evidence. You will hear the plaintiff present the wrong science and accuse the wrong defendant. So you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, must give the right answer. We have nothing but sympathy for Dakota Weirs, but Lush fertilizer did not cause their cancer because Lush fertilizer put people over profits. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I should have mentioned that I typically have a break between the segments of the trial, meaning that after the opening statement, there's going to be a pause so that the scoring members, scoring judges can fill out their scorecards. So before we get to the next witness, we're going to allow them time to do that. And scoring judges, when you're completed, would you please come on and let me know you're done? Thank you.
Your Honor, was there going to be a score sheet put into the chat box?
I don't know how that was going to work, but we can find out. Why don't we ask the courtroom monitor to make sure that each of the scoring panelists has a scoring sheet?
Yes, let me look into it.
I just put the link in the chat box if it works.
Okay.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
And I have scored, Your Honor.
You have scored?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
I have as well. So
Thank you.
I have as well.
Thank you.
And I have as well, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you very much. Team Andy, would you please call your first witness?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand.
All right, Ms. Weirs, I would remind you that you remain under the oath you took at the beginning of this proceeding.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record. One moment, Your Honor. I'm sorry. May we have a moment to try and resolve our technical difficulties we're having?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Your Honor, would it be okay to pause the time during these technical difficulties?
Sorry, please pause the time.
Can you hear me now, Your Honor?
Yeah, yes, I can. And
Okay.
assume that the other scoring panelists can hear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All
Is
right.
this any
Thank
better?
you very much. Go ahead with your examination, Ms. Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
Mr. Weirs, can you tell the jury why you are here today?
I'm here today because I think that ingredients in Lush fertilizer Drufo caused my cancer.
Mr. Weirs, how has this cancer affected your life?
Well, before I got cancer, I was very active in my community, in my school, and now I'm too tired and in too much pain to do any of that anymore.
Thank you. Before you developed your disease, what were your plans for school?
Oh, well, I am pretty good with the piano, and because of that, I got a full ride scholarship to Juilliard. But now, because of my cancer, I cannot do that anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Mr. Weirs, does anyone else in your family have cancer?
No, not even my twin brother.
Did your twin work in landscaping with you?
No, we were involved in mostly the same tasks and occupations through the years, but landscaping.
Thank you. Mr. Weirs, can you explain why you believe that Lush fertilizer caused your cancer?
I was, one day I was sitting on the couch, which is a unfortunately usual occurrence now. And I was watching the news when I saw a news story about how a product in Lush fertilizer Drufo was linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Is there a response?
Yes, Your Honor. I am not asking this question, nor is the witness giving this answer to provide the truth of the matter. I am merely setting the scene for why Mr. Weirs believes that Lush fertilizer caused his cancer.
All right, counsel, do you have a reply to that?
Yes, Your Honor. This is being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. If co-counsel is trying to argue that the effect on the listener was that Mr. Weirs then believed that Lush caused his cancer, that statement is for the truth of the matter asserted.
Ms. Jensen?
Your Honor, I am not trying to assert that what the article on the news said was true necessarily by the article. I am merely asking Mr. Weirs to explain why he believes Lush fertilizer caused his cancer. He is explaining why he had begun to think this. He is not explaining that this news story is necessarily true.
So what you're saying is that you're asking him to explain how he started to investigate the cause of his cancer?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, then. Overruled. Go ahead.
So I was sitting on the couch, as is a unfortunately natural occurrence nowadays, when I saw the news story that said a product in Lush fertilizer, Drufo, was linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which coincidentally is the cancer I have.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Your Honor, I would now like to direct the court and opposing counsel's attention to what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 1. Mr. Weirs, can you explain to the jury what Exhibit 1 is?
Yes, this is the label on the bag of Lush fertilizer I used at my landscaping company.
Thank you. Is it a fair and accurate representation of this label?
I believe so.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Ms. Brisky, is there any objection to the admission of Exhibit 1?
No objection, Your Honor.
Then Exhibit 1 is admitted.
Thank you. Mr. Weirs, does this label show that there is Drufo contained in Lush fertilizer?
Yes, it does.
Are there any recommendations on the packaging?
Yes, there are the safety recommendations.
Thank you. What are some of those safety recommendations?
It says to utilize protective clothing and use a respirator or N95 face mask.
Thank you. Mr. Weirs, is there a warning on Lush Fertilizer's packaging about Drufo and its dangers?
Yes, it says keep out of reach of children and out of the eyes.
Is there a warning about Drufo causing cancer?
No, there is not.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Cross-examination, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Burris, before I begin here, I would just like to say that my co-counsel and I are truly sorry that you have to live with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and all of our hearts really do go out to you. Mr. Burris, luckily though, you said your doctor has not given up hope. Is that correct?
Yeah, he is uncertain and I'm uncertain, but yeah.
And earlier you testified that you will not be going to Juilliard, but you can defer the scholarship that you received for up to 2 years, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Mr. Weirs, you worked at Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes.
And your job there was to spread fertilizer?
Yes, that and the seeds, because I wasn't able.
And at that job, you used multiple different fertilizers. Isn't that right? Your Honor, can we pause?
Yoko, I think we've.
Yeah,
lost-
sorry,
Okay.
Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, I think we can hear you now. So I will keep going. I'll just ask that one more time. So at this job, you used multiple different fertilizers, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So you cannot be certain that Lush fertilizer is the fertilizer that caused your cancer.
I suppose not.
And as a matter of fact, Mr. Weirs, you cannot be sure that a fertilizer caused your cancer.
I am not sure.
And on direct, you testified that it was a TV clip that first convinced you that Lush fertilizer was the fertilizer responsible, right?
It did not convince me. It's just I saw it, and so I was curious, and then my father and I proceeded to research that.
But it was the TV clip that first sparked this interest.
Objection, asked and answered.
Ms. Innocent, do you have a response?
Yes, Your Honor. I did ask a similar question, but I do not believe that the witness really answered my question.
Your Honor, if I may respond, the witness did fully answer her question. She asked if he had been convinced by that news story, and he told her that he had not.
Well, I think on cross-examination, the counsel has some leeway to emphasize the point she desires to emphasize, so overruled. Ms. Innocent, go ahead.
Your Honor, permission to screen share Exhibit 1, which has already been admitted into evidence.
Granted.
My co-counsel could do that now. Now, Mr. Weirs, this is the Lush fertilizer label, correct?
Yes, it is.
Now, if my co-counsel could zoom into the section of the label marked user safety recommendations. Thank you. Now, Mr. Weirs, please follow along as I read this first sentence. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. So according to Lush Fertilizer, you were supposed to be wearing protective clothing when using this product. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the company you worked for, Haven Landscaping, also had a policy in place about wearing protective clothing. Is that right?
Yes, they did.
Now, despite this label and the company policy, you did not wear protective clothing.
No, I did not. It was not reinforced.
Mr. Weirs, you did not wear pants.
I wore shorts.
And you did not
a-
wear long sleeves.
No, I did not.
And you did not wear gloves.
No.
Now, please follow along as I continue reading. Use of a respirator or N95 face mask is recommended. So, according to Lush, you were also supposed to be wearing a face mask.
Yes.
Haven Landscaping also had a policy that required you to wear a face mask,
Yes,
but you still did not wear a face mask
that is correct.
because you said that you liked feeling the wind on your bare face.
Yes, I did. I enjoy being outside.
Okay, my co-counsel can now stop sharing this exhibit. Thank you. Ms. Weirs, Mr. Weirs, you said that you were 14 years old when you were working with this product, correct?
It was the summer of my 14th year. I started at my landscaping job.
So legally, you were a minor, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and Your Honor, would it be okay if my co-counsel put that exhibit up one more time?
Yes, it would.
And then if my co-counsel could zoom into the hazards section of the label. Mr. Weirs, please follow along as I read this. Keep out of reach of children. So, Mr. Weirs, not only did you fail to take any safety precautions when using this product, but you were not supposed to be using this product in the first place, were you?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, the landscaping job gave me this, so I'm not sure.
But according to this label, you were not supposed to be using the product.
It kind of depends on your definition of children.
You were 14, weren't you?
I was 14.
I have
when I
no further
started.
questions. Sorry, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Jensen, do you have any redirect?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Weirs, did you know when you were using Lush fertilizer the dangers that Truffaut could cause you?
No, it did not say anything about cancer at all.
If you had known the dangers that Truffaut posed you, would you have acted differently?
Yes, I would have been more careful and used the recommendations.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. The witness is excused. And the scoring panels may complete their scoring of this round.
I'm done, Your Honor.
I am as
And
well.
Your Honor. I am as well.
And I am as well.
Thank you. Team Andy, please call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Carson Durst to the stand. Would you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Durst?
I am the head of research and development at Terrace Greenery.
When did you start working in this industry?
I started my career in the fertilizer industry back in 2003.
And how long have you been doing this?
Well, that would make it roughly 20 years.
Thank you. Who were you working for when you started?
I started my career at Lush Fertilizer.
Thank you. And what position do you hold in your job now?
Currently, I am the head of my department at Head of Research and Development.
And do you have any certifications?
Yes, I do. I have a bachelor's in chemical engineering from Arizona State University.
What other experience do you have?
Other than that, I have my 20 years of experience in the field.
Thank you. Mr. Durst, how did you get your job at Lush Fertilizer?
I got my first internship at Lush because I was close family with the CEO, Blake Doncourt.
And how did you know Mr. Doncourt?
Me and his son and I, Charles, played soccer on the local team together.
Thank you. When did you start with Lush Fertilizer?
I started in about July 2003, right out of college.
And what work did you do there?
I was a product development engineer on the research and development team.
Were you working in a full-time position?
At first I was not, but I quickly rose up and got a promotion to my full-time position.
And what did you do in your full-time position?
I was part of the research and development team and helped develop Drufo.
What is Drufo?
Drufo is a chemical bonding agent that helps essentially preserve Lush Fertilizer's products and gives it that longevity that distinguishes it from other products in the industry.
What did the Drufo development process involve?
Our main task was to test the safety of Drufo and log our results in a notebook.
What was found in this testing?
I particularly found a study conducted in Britain that indicated that a component in Drufo named nitrogen phosphorus carbonate is carcinogenic in rats.
Thank you. Mr. Durst, was a second study conducted by Lush Fertilizer at the conclusion of the first?
Yes, after the first study concluded, concerns arose that Drufo could be carcinogenic in humans. So Lush initiated a new study to dig deeper on this subject.
Thank you. Your Honor, I would like to draw the court's attention to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4 for identification purposes. I would ask the court to direct opposing counsel's attention to what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 4 as well. Mr. Durst, have you seen this before?
Yes, I have.
Could you tell the jury what it is?
This is an email from our superiors at Lush indicating the procedures we should take for the second study on Drufo.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the email you received?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Is there any objection to the admission of Exhibit 4?
No objection, Your Honor.
Then Exhibit 4 shall be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. What was the conclusion of this second study, Mr. Durst?
At our final meeting for the study, our team had found that not only could Drufo be linked to cancer, but specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Regardless of this news, management told us to keep it under wraps until the analysis was performed.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma ever specifically discussed?
Yes, at that meeting.
Thank you. Were there any recommendations made that would eliminate the risk of Drufos causing cancer?
Yes, it was recommended that Drufo-containing products be baked to remove carcinogenics, but Lush did not do this.
Thank you. Did Lush Fertilizer know the dangers of Drufo?
Yes, I told them.
How did your work life change after these studies were concluded?
After this, my manager started giving me poor performance reports, although I can assure you that my work was as good, if not better.
How did your association with Lush end?
After these reports just kept coming, I went to speak with Blake Doncourt about the subject, and he essentially told me to deal with it myself, and it was out of his control. So I knew my employment there was going to be over soon, and decided to seek employment elsewhere.
After being fired from Lush, where did you go?
By the time I was fired, I had already found an opening in Terrace Greenery, so I went and worked there.
How did Ms. Doncourt react to this?
Mr. Doncourt reacted by filing a lawsuit against me, claiming I broke non-compete agreement.
What was the result of this lawsuit?
The lawsuit, the court settled in my favor, stating that I could go work for Terrace after 6 months.
And how is work at Terrace Greenery?
It's gone very well. Over the years, I've been promoted to the head of my department, and I currently am the head of research and development.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Durst, did Lush Fertilizer know the dangers of Drufo?
Yes, they did. I told them personally.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Team Pam, you may cross-examine. This is Ms. Bidgood.
Good evening, Mr. Durst.
Hey.
You have a degree in chemical engineering.
Yeah.
Am I correct in saying you didn't graduate top of your class?
Yes, you are.
And did you get your job at Lush after commiserating with Charles Duncourt about not having any luck finding a job?
Yes.
Is it true that Blake pulled strings for you to get this position?
Yes, he's the CEO.
To reiterate, you are not a toxicologist.
No.
You are not an oncologist.
No.
You are not an epidemiologist.
No.
Nor are you a medical doctor.
No.
So when you began at Lush, you were an intern, correct?
Yes.
And you only served in this role for 3 months?
Yeah, roughly.
So you base your concerns of Drufo off of a study conducted by a team you have very little experience with, correct?
Well, I worked with them for about 3 years.
You found a study testing Drufo in rats, correct?
Yes.
And a part of this study concluded that Drufo was not carcinogenic.
No, the study concluded that it was carcinogenic in rats.
A part of this study concluded that it was not, a part of the earlier study concluded that it was not carcinogenic in rats.
Objection vague, Your Honor.
Do you have a response, Ms. Bidgood?
I do not believe this question is vague. It's asking for a very specific part of this study.
Well, I didn't really understand what she was saying either, so.
Let me rule on the objection first. Ms. Jensen, why do you think this is a vague question?
She's not saying what part of the study necessarily, and I don't think my witness is understanding the question.
Well, I think the witness can speak for himself and say that if he doesn't understand it, ask for clarification. So with that understanding, Ms. Bidgood, if you have a clarification, would you like to make it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
There was an earlier study that concluded it was not carcinogenic in rats.
Well, which study are you talking about?
The study conducted on rats.
Well, no, that study concluded that Drufo was carcinogenic in rats.
So it is your testimony today that part of the earlier study concluded that this is not carcinogenic in rats.
What are you trying to ask? I don't really understand.
I'm asking if it is your testimony today that part of the earlier study concluded that it was carcinogenic in rats.
That it was. It was carcinogenic.
Yes, so that is your statement today.
Yes.
Do you recall making an affidavit in today's case?
Yes.
Could my co-counsel please screen share exhibit 3, please? And can you please zoom in on the second paragraph in the introduction section? Give me a second, Your Honor, please. Please read along with me as I read out loud. Likewise, long-term carcinogenicity studies conducted by the manufacturers of C3N09P using rats and mice in the late 90s did not demonstrate any carcinogenic effects.
Mm-hmm.
Did I read that correctly?
Yes, but that is in the introduction, referring to other studies. You were talking about this specific study that concluded that it was indeed carcinogenic.
I'm sorry, Mr. Durst. I believe I asked you about the conclusions of the earlier study.
Well, I didn't look into the earlier studies. I looked into this study.
Okay, I'll move on, Mr. Durst. You never found a study identifying Drufo to be carcinogenic in humans, correct?
No, because you can't expose humans to carcinogens humanely.
So no, you did not find a study.
No, I did not.
You admit that you don't have all access, you did not have access to all data analyzed by the research and development team.
No.
And you admit that after you handed in your lab notebook, you could only speculate about what happened next.
Yes.
Is it true you were forced to sign a performance improvement plan?
Yes.
And after you signed this plan, instead of improving your performance, you went to talk to Blake, correct?
Yes.
And you asked Blake to intervene.
Yes, I did.
Did you ever bring your concerns to anyone's attention prior to your poor performance reviews?
No, I did not.
After another abysmal performance review, you went to talk to Blake again, correct?
Yes.
And this conversation left you disheartened?
Yes.
And soon after, you were fired.
Yes.
You then got a job at Terrace Greenery, correct?
Yes, I did.
And one of the reasons you applied was to get Blake's goat.
Yes, at the time that was the heat of moment anger, but now that I look back at it, I am very thankful for Blake for kickstarting my career, and I certainly would not be here today as head of R&D at my current job if it weren't for him.
Right, so you applied out of anger.
Well, I also needed a job.
You had previously signed a confidentiality agreement with Lush, correct?
Yes.
Objection relevant.
Ms. Bidgood, is the objection is relevance? Do you have an answer, response?
Yes, relevance is a very low bar. I'm just asking the witness if he had signed this agreement, which I'd say is relevant to this case because it is with Lush, the company in the case today.
May I
Ms. Jensen?
respond, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I don't see how this is relevant when he is no longer working for the company, and we are not here to talk about his work with Lush Fertilizer. We're here to talk about the damages that have come to Dakota Weirs.
Ms. Bidgood?
Yes, in my next line of questioning, I will ask about how he broke this agreement and how after he signed this confidentiality agreement, then broke the agreement. It goes to the credibility of this witness and whether there are any ulterior motives in this testimony today.
All right, Ms. Jensen, the line of question is to demonstrate bias or um, a tendency to prevaricate. Do you see that as relevant or not relevant?
I still don't think that the confidentiality agreement is relevant because I don't think it could go to show any bias when, if anything, Mr. Durst's being fired from Lush has helped him.
Well, I think there was a lawsuit and there was a resolution of the lawsuit. And this may or may not, as the jury interprets the testimony, show that he has some reason to testify against Lush. And so therefore the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll repeat my question. You had previously signed a confidentiality agreement with Lush,
Yes, I did.
and you broke this agreement.
Yes, because I had forgotten about it.
And suddenly, Terrace Greenery created a product very similar to Lush fertilizer.
Well, yeah, they both make fertilizer.
So after you broke this confidentiality agreement, Terrace Greenery created a product very similar to Lush fertilizer.
Yeah.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Jensen, you have any redirect?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, you brought up your concerns while you were working at Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. The witness is excused.
I'm done scoring, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I am as well, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I am as well, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I am as well, Your Honor.
Okay. Then Team Andy, you may call your third witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff would now like to call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
All right, Dr. Rogers, I remind you, you remain under the oath you took at the beginning of this proceeding.
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Casey Rogers, Rogers.
Thank you. Can you explain to the jury what you do for a living?
Yes, I'm a professor at UC Berkeley of California in the horticulture and entomology department.
Professor, what are your academic credentials?
I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology from UC Berkeley, California, and a Bachelor of Science in agriculture and chemistry from CSU.
Do you have any other previous relevant experience?
Yes, I was a research analyst for a large multinational company.
I would now like to draw the court's attention to what has previously been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 6. Have you seen this before, Professor?
Yes, I have.
Would you describe it for the jury, please?
Yes, it is my CV, which entails my relevant employment and my education experience.
What does this experience include?
I have studied pesticide chemistry and toxicology, among other things.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of what has previously been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Is there an objection to the admission of Exhibit 6?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, then Exhibit 6 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you. And I would now like to draw the court's attention to what has previously been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 7. Have you seen this before?
Yes, I have.
Can you explain what it is to the jury?
Yes, it is a list of my peer-reviewed research publications.
What did the research for these publications involve?
I primarily studied the harmful effects of various chemicals, specifically Drufo.
And how long have you been studying Drufo?
Since 2013.
What studies exactly have you conducted?
I conducted a study on its weed resistance and its human exposure, as well as its carcinogenicity.
Your Honor, I move for the admission of what has previously been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Is there an objection to the admission of Exhibit 7?
No objection, Your Honor.
Then Exhibit 7 is admitted.
Thank you. How have you used your aforementioned research, Dr. Rogers?
I was consulted by many advisory boards and regulatory agencies.
Your Honor, I now move to have this witness recognized as an expert in pesticide toxicology, specifically involving Drufo and its harmful effects and carcinogenicity.
Is there an objection to the admission or the acceptance of Dr. Rogers as an expert in the field of pesticide toxicology with specific concentrations involving Drufo?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission for a brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. You
Good
have a degree.
afternoon.
My apologies. You have a degree in agriculture and entomology, correct?
Yes, I do.
And in essence, agriculture is plants and livestock, right?
Yes.
And entomology is the study of bugs. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
These are the fields that you currently work in and teach in every day, yes?
Yes.
But you have no formal degree in toxicology, yes?
No, I do not.
You're also not a medical doctor, is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I object to this witness being entered in the fields of pesticide toxicology. More specifically, would like to limit the scope to not include the negative effects of chemicals of Drufo on the body, as she is not a medical doctor and has no formal degree in toxicology. While I can agree she does have expertise in agriculture and chemistry and possibly pesticides, she doesn't have the proper qualifications to testify today.
Ms. Harrison?
Your Honor, while Dr. Rogers does not have a specific degree in toxicology, she has done years and years of research on the subject. She also has a degree in chemistry, which is directly related. And while a formal degree is a great credential, so is extensive research on a topic. She has done 2 studies on harmful effects of Drufo and another 2 studies on its weed resistance. She is very well versed in this topic.
Well, Ms. Harrison, I agree with your argument concerning the ability to qualify a witness as an expert through more than a formal degree, including experience. Part of the objection is to Dr. Rogers' qualifications to testify as to medical subjects. What do you have to say about that?
While Dr. Rogers does not have a medical degree, Dr. Rogers has specifically researched harmful effects. So while of course, I would not argue that Dr. Rogers would be able to treat something like this, I would certainly argue that Dr. Rogers would be able to tell us about harmful effects, as that is part of her extensive research.
Okay, Ms. Brisky, what do you have to say about that?
Dr. Rogers has no expertise in the medical side of harmful effects of chemicals. And while she has written a couple articles surrounding Drufo, she doesn't have sufficient qualifications to testify to the medical aspects of this pesticide.
Okay, on balance, it's a close question, and I think Ms. Harrison is correct generally that the witness has had the opportunity to investigate generally and as an academic matter the effects of Drufo as a poison. Whether she has a basis for testifying in a specific instance, I think is something that cannot be determined at this point. and we'll have to wait until there is a specific question in a specific context. So on the whole, I'm going to overrule the objection and admit Dr. Rogers as an expert in the field of pesticide toxicology.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Earlier, you mentioned some of your studies. Can you describe how some of them were organized?
Yes, I can. There were 3 groups, a control group, a group who was occasionally exposed to Drufo, and a group who on the daily was exposed to Drufo.
What did you monitor these groups for?
Various health conditions.
And what was the outcome of this study?
There was an increase in health conditions in the 2 groups that were exposed to Drufo.
How significant was that increase?
The participants regularly exposed to Drufo were 10 times more likely to contract these illnesses.
What was included in this list of health conditions and illnesses?
A number of cancers, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Based on your previous research experience and your examination of this specific case, what is your expert opinion in regards to Mr. Weirs and his exposure to Drufo?
It is highly medically probable that Mr. Weir's exposure to Drufo.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes.
I believe this is outside the scope of this witness's knowledge, as she can't testify to a particular instance of a medical case.
Your objection is foundation?
Yes,
Essentially?
Your Honor.
Okay.
Essentially.
Ms. Harrison?
As I entered this witness as an expert in Drufo and its harmful effects and carcinogenicity, I believe it to be within this witness's scope of expertise to testify as to this specific instance, as she would know what kind of exposure to Drufo would be likely to lead to cancers, as mentioned with the study that she just did, including non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Well, is the nature of your question to inquire as to the effect of Drufo as a general matter on the potential of causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or is it directed specifically to the plaintiff in this?
It is
case?
specifically about the plaintiff and looking at his exposure to Drufo compared to the exposure to Drufo of those subjects in her study, comparing and making a judgment based off of that.
Okay, I guess I will let the witness answer. At this point, there's no evidence that I've heard that links anything that this specific plaintiff did to result in exposure or to a causation between the use of Drufo and his illness. So, and while the order is up to you to pursue, I think it's also incumbent upon you to link that up at some point to show how there is a connection between her opinion and the facts of this case. So go ahead.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Dr. Rogers, or would you just like to finish your answer?
Yes, please repeat the question.
Based on your previous research experience and your examination of this specific case, including Dakota Weir's prolonged exposure to Drufo, what is your expert opinion in regards to Mr. Weir's and the effects of his exposure to Drufo over a long period of time?
It is highly medically probable that Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was caused by his exposure to the chemical Drufo.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, Ms. Brisky, cross-examination.
This is your first time testifying as an expert witness, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, you stated hopefully it won't be your last, correct?
Yes, I want to do this a lot more in the future.
Right, you want more lawsuits where you can be on the forefront of the battle, yes?
Yes, where I can help.
You conducted a study on Drufo, correct?
Yes, I did.
But this study was not peer reviewed, was it?
No, it was not.
It wasn't duplicated for accuracy.
No.
And it was solely geared towards one environmental factor, correct?
Yes.
So you failed to look at any other environmental conditions that your subjects could have been subjected to?
Yes, I did.
And these environmental factors could have led your subjects to develop cancer, yes?
Yes.
You also stated that your study was partially inconclusive, right?
Yes, I did.
And this part was about how to mitigate exposure to the potentially carcinogenic Drufo, yes?
Yes.
And wouldn't this be something that would be important to confirm?
Yes, it would.
Yet you couldn't find time before trial today to confirm this, could you?
No, I cannot. There was not enough time.
Yet you still crafted multiple safety recommendations, correct?
I did. Better to be safe than sorry.
Yes, and so this was long sleeves, correct?
Yes.
Wearing pants.
Yes.
And wearing some sort of a mask, yes?
Yes.
But you state in your statement that Dakota was subjected to the use of Drufo without protective gear, correct?
Yes, I did.
This means that he neglected to wear any of the safety recommendations you previously recommended, yes?
Yes.
And your claim today is that Drufo causes cancer, yes?
Yes, it is.
But again, you made this claim on a study that was not peer reviewed.
Yes.
You made this claim on a study that was not duplicated.
Yes.
And you made this claim on a study that is partially inconclusive, correct?
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Harrison, do you have any redirect?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
Go ahead.
Dr. Rogers, what were the results of the section of your study on protective coverings again?
The results were very inconclusive. There was insufficient time and most workers are not provided with the correct protective equipment.
On the other hand, what were the results of the section of your study on Drufo and its harmful effects again?
That part of the study was very conclusive, showing that there is a proven link from Drufo to cancer.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Then the witness is excused.
The defense would like to call Dr. Williams to the stand.
We're going to wait until we have scores from the first.
My apologies, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
I am done, Your Honor.
Thank you.
As am I, Your Honor.
Thank you.
As am I, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I'm done also, Your Honor.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Plaintiff, do you have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
All right, thank you. Defense, you may present your first witness if you have any.
Thank you, Your Honor. We call Dr. Williams to the stand. Good afternoon, Dr. Williams. Could you please state your name?
Dr. Williams, I'll remind you that you remain under the oath you took at the beginning of this session.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Dr. Williams. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Devin Williams, Williams.
And what is your current occupation?
I've been working with Lush as the lead of the Toxicology Research and Development Labs, as well as I'm the outgoing chair of the company's Ethic Committee.
And what is it that you and your team research?
My team and I overly evaluate the chemical compounds in all of our products, one of those chemicals being Drufo.
How long have you been working at Lush Fertilizer?
I've been working with Lush for nearly a decade now and have been leading the labs for about 7 years.
And what does your job position require you to do?
I am largely in charge of overseeing all the environmental impacts of our products. However, I see myself as having an inherent responsibility to always consider the whys and ifs beyond my immediate project objectives.
And what scientific skills do you have?
Through my training and experience, I understand how to research and evaluate test results to determine the fate and effects of potentially toxic chemical agents. With this, I know how to identify if any toxins are going to harm the average human being and how to neutralize that harm if it ever does happen.
Your Honor, based on this witness's extensive experience, training, and certification, we move to enter Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in pharmacotoxicology, the effects of Drufo, and forensic toxicology pursuant to Rule 702.
All right, Ms. Jensen, do you have an objection to the acceptance of Dr. Williams as an expert in the field of pharmacology and toxicology?
I apologize. I'm Miss Harrison, just as a note for your scorekeeping.
I'm sorry, I guess I had the wrong. Okay, Ms. Harrison, go ahead.
Thank you. I do not object, Your Honor.
All right, then the witness is accepted as an expert. Ms. Bidgood, go ahead.
Thank you. What is Drufo?
Drufo is a new revolutionary chemical that binds all the ingredients in our fertilizer together. I'm also aware that I'm here today due to the fact there's a belief that Drufo could cause cancer.
And why was Drufo created?
Well, Drufo was originally created because it straddles both mods of how fertilizers enhance plant growth. One of those being it adds nutrients, and the other by improving the effectiveness of the soil by modifying its water retention and aeration, which both of these things do impact environmental balances.
You called Drufo a revolutionary product. Why was that?
Well, Drufo truly is a revolutionary product for the simple fact it doesn't contribute to nitrate pollution. Many mid-20th century fertilizers focused on nitrogen-fixing chemical processes. However, this was later deemed as problematic since we discovered it causes a process known as eutrophication.
And what is eutrophication?
Eutrophication is what—
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
All right, Ms. Bidgood, what is the relevance of this?
Yes, this is just going to show that Lush's policies and that they are environmentally friendly. This will lead us later to talk about some of why we're here today and some of the other points of this case.
Ms. Harrison?
While Drufo may be very environmentally friendly, that is not the focus of our case today. The focus of our case today is Drufo's effects on humans. So while, of course, that's a very important part of the product, it is not an important part of what we are discussing today. I do not think it's necessary to get into nitrogen and how it affects the soil with Drufo.
Okay, well, the stated purpose for this testimony is to demonstrate purportedly that the defendant has generally good environmentally intentions in producing and selling its products. That indicates that the attempt here is to demonstrate through a pattern of practice or a general character trait of the corporation that it must be acting consistent with that trait in terms of producing Drufo. And I don't think you can prove it that way. I don't think it's relevant, so I will sustain the objection. Go ahead.
Is it true that Drufo is banned in the EU?
Yes, this is true.
And did this decision consider cancerous?
Well, the reasons the EU had ultimately decided to ban Drufo wasn't a cancer-related issue at all. Under the European Union's nitrate directive, no new fertilizer may be used that contribute to more than incidental nitrate accumulation under lab test. Drufo heavily reduces the amount of nitrates in nature, which made it perfect because it doesn't contribute to eutrophication, which is very harmful. However, in these unrealistic laboratory conditions, Drufo does contain some nitrogen, so it appears as though there's a buildup when it doesn't do that in nature at all.
So do you believe that this ban is valid?
No, not at all. And Lush Fertilizer Incorporated do plan on submitting our findings to the EU about how environmentally friendly Drufo is once we have everything finalized.
Have you reviewed Casey Rogers' study?
I have, and I personally find Dr. Rogers' study was a fluke.
And what were the results of this study?
Dr. Casey Rogers' study analysis had concluded that there was a correlation from Drufo to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. However, her study wasn't a clean and thorough study. A valid study would need a comparison from farm labor who use Drufo products to farm laborers who use fertilizers without Drufo.
And were there any possible errors in the procedure of the study?
Yes, I believe there were multiple errors in Dr. Rogers' study. For one, she had compared apples to oranges, as well as with the array of environments, you couldn't pin it down to Drufo being the cause to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Overall, Dr. Rogers' study had never been peer-reviewed and most importantly, has never been replicated.
Can you talk about the tests that can be done to determine if Drufo can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Of course, overall, a key factor to let us know that Drufo doesn't cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma is to look at the statistics. If you take any group of people, any large group of people, you will notice that one group will have a higher rate of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. This is known as the random element. To reduce this random element, you have to compare farm laborers who use Drufo products to other farm laborers who use products without Drufo, which wasn't what Dr. Casey Rogers did, looked at farm laborers to casual gardeners. When you look at these statistics with the closer comparison, you will notice there is no correlation to non-Hodgkin lymphoma with Drufo.
So has there been a significant increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma since the creation of Drufo?
There hasn't been any at all, in fact, and simply put, Drufo does not cause cancer.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harrison, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, you've worked for Lush for a long time.
Yes, I've been with them for nearly a decade now.
You're a department head there.
Yes, I lead the toxicology research and development labs.
So it would be fair to say if Lush does well, you do well.
Of course, they're the company I work for. I hope to see them do well.
You were brought onto the Drufo development team about halfway through its testing.
Yes, this is true.
This was when there was a lot of employee turnover.
Yes, there was a specific time frame where the turnover rate was high.
And testing timelines were therefore impacted.
I had only begun to impact, however, it didn't impact our accuracy at all.
Drufo is banned in quite a few countries.
Yes, most of these countries under the EU, but I explained why this is a faulty thing.
And Lush didn't fight that.
No, at the time we were a smaller company, but again, we do plan on submitting our findings once everything's wrapped up and finalized.
You thought it would be too costly to fight it.
Yes, again, we were a smaller company at the time and it was just smarter to make a line without it, though Drufo is amazing and we do want to make a line with it at some point.
And as you mentioned, you're now making plans to appeal for reconsideration of the EU's banning of Drufo.
Yes.
Mr. Weir's winning this lawsuit would disrupt those plans.
Well, of course, any company that's being accused of something as big as cancer, that would hurt them in many ways, but I'm not too concerned since Drufo doesn't cause cancer.
If he were to win, that would mean more work for you and your colleagues.
Can you rephrase the question?
If Mr. Weirs were to win this case, that would create more work for you and your colleagues.
Again, yes.
And Lush Fertilizers products can be manufactured without Drufo.
They can be, but Drufo creates such a great environmental impact that we really like to have all of our products with Drufo.
So you still continue to add this chemical to your products outside of the EU?
Yes, the US is one of them.
Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you. Is there any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Then the witness is excused.
I have completed my scoring, Your Honor.
Me as well, Judge.
Me as well, Your Honor.
I have as well, Judge.
All right, thank you. Defense, you may call your next witness.
The defense calls Ms. Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Ms. Weirs, I'll remind you that you remain under the oath that you took at the beginning of this session.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Skylar Weirs, Weirs.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
What's your occupation?
I'm an investigative journalist for the Rationalist magazine.
What is the Rationalist magazine?
Yeah, The Rationalist is a science, education, and advocacy magazine. It's published by the Rationalist Society, which is a nonprofit dedicated to stopping the spread of pseudoscience.
What kind of material do you write for the Rationalist?
I write on a variety of subjects, but most recently I've been writing on modern agritech and commercial agriculture.
Can you tell me about your background in modern agritech and commercial agriculture?
Yeah, my editor picked me to write a series on modern agritech. And as part of that series, I wrote an article questioning the link between Drufo and cancer.
And what did you do to prepare to write these articles?
I spent almost a year reading and researching. I went through a ton of different articles published by all different agritech companies. And from there, I went back and looked at the publications referenced in those articles and went over those and studied those as well.
Wow. Did you do anything further?
Yes, I also maintained a wealth of information from the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
And do you believe all this research gave you a good foundation to start writing?
Oh, yes, definitely. My knowledge base includes not only general knowledge, but also statistical and historical information. In fact, outside of the USDA and NASDA, I doubt many people really have the overall perspective on modern agritech as I do.
Your Honor, I offer Ms. Skylar Weirs as an expert in modern agritech pursuant to Rule 702.
Ms. Jensen, do you have an objection to the admission of the witness as an expert?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to voir dire.
Go ahead.
Miss Weirs, you're not a scientist.
Correct.
You're not a doctor.
Correct.
You don't have a PhD.
That's correct.
You don't have a master's degree.
Correct.
You didn't go to college at all.
No, college really wasn't for me. I pursued the researching route instead.
So your job is not to research Drufo.
Well, my job is to research, what I've been researching recently is modern agritech and commercial agriculture, which includes research on Drufo. Additionally, I wrote an article on Drufo that was published.
And you've never conducted any experiments on Drufo.
No, again, I'm a researcher, so I more research studies conducted on Drufo.
You've never worked with Drufo yourself?
No, again, I don't have personal work with it. However, I'm very knowledgeable about it as I've done extensive research on it.
You've only ever read about Drufo?
Not just read, researched.
Your Honor, I object to this witness being entered as an expert on Drufo, seeing as this witness does not necessarily have any more experience with Drufo than the average lay witness would, having no more knowledge of Drufo than the public files any lay person could access, no experience or skill with Drufo itself, and no training having to do with Drufo or chemical fertilizers. While she most certainly might be an expert in journalism, reading magazine articles on a product does not make an expert on that product.
Ms. Brisky, do you have a response to the objection?
Yes, Your Honor. According to the pretrial ruling and Rule 702, Skylar Weirs is more than qualified to be an expert in modern agritech and has researched Drufo. She only needs one of the 5 factors being knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. And we've established sufficient foundation as to her knowledge from her wealth of research for her to be entered as an expert in modern agritech today. In addition, the point made about any lay witness being able to access these records is true. However, not every lay witness has. Ms. Weirs has.
All right, thank you. I think that the defense has the better of this argument in that the witness has established that she has the knowledge, at least through her own research, to testify as an expert and to offer opinions as to modern agritech. And it is true that any person can access that information, but that probably proves too much in that you could argue against anybody becoming an expert, because anybody could undertake that line of experience. So therefore the objection is overruled and the witness is accepted as an expert in the field of modern agrotech. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You mentioned something called DRUFO. Can you tell the jury what that is?
Yes, DRUFO is a bonding agent in lush fertilizer. It's really revolutionary for both the environment and the people using the fertilizer. It's a really effective bonding agent, meaning a significantly smaller amount needs to be applied. And that's really good for reducing nitrate contamination in waterways. It's also good for the people using the fertilizer because a significantly smaller amount needs to be applied.
And have you heard the claim that DRUFO causes cancer?
Yes, I have.
Do you agree with this claim?
I do not. Across all my very extensive research, and again, I look at all different agri-tech companies to get various opinions. I haven't come across any credible studies linking the two.
And are there any gardening substances that have been previously linked to cancer?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of other gardening substances on the market that contain active ingredients that Lush doesn't. A big one being arsenic, which is classified as a known carcinogen, and another one being glyphosate, which is classified as a potential carcinogen. So yes, these would have a much clearer link to cancer.
Moving on, if your twin Dakota doesn't win the settlement today, how would this affect you?
It would actually harm me financially.
How would it harm you financially?
Well, as far as I know, I have not been written out of my father's will. And if Dakota doesn't receive this settlement, he's already, of course, agreed to cover his medical costs, meaning I would technically get less money in the long run.
And how does it feel to be testifying against your twin today?
I mean, I don't
Objection, relevance.
The objection is relevance. Ms. Brisky, do you have a response?
Yes, Your Honor. This goes to the potential bias or lack thereof of this witness going to the credibility of her testimony.
Ms. Jensen?
Your Honor, I see no reason why it is relevant how Ms. Weirs feels about testifying today. She has been testifying on DRUFO and its dangers or not its dangers, and the case is about DRUFO and its dangers, not about Ms. Weir's feelings.
I agree with the plaintiff and sustain the objection.
Why do you believe so strongly in Lush's mission in DRUFO?
Well, Lush is an incredibly ethical fertilizer company. What initially drew me to start researching was their commitment to donate 10% of their annual profits towards reducing nitrate contamination. But from there, what really impressed me was just how much of a safer product they are.
And based on your research of DRUFO, do you think it could be responsible for Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
No, I do not. Again, across my extensive research, it's been demonstrated to me that DRUFO is not a carcinogen. I heard Dakota testify that he used an array of different fertilizers while working at Havens Landscaping, and these could have been fertilizers that contain known carcinogens. So
and how? My apologies.
It wouldn't really surprise me if he developed his non-Hodgkin's from a synthetic fertilizer. However, I do not believe that fertilizer was Lush.
How could have Dakota protected himself from these other carcinogenic fertilizers?
Well, I also heard Dakota testify that he didn't wear any protective gear when working with any fertilizers, even safer ones like Lush. I think this is ultimately an issue of poor training by Haven Landscaping. I don't think any employer should allow its teenage workers to work with any chemicals without ensuring that they're wearing proper protective gear. And I want justice for Dakota just as much as anyone else. Dakota just has the wrong defendant.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Jensen, do you have cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you're an investigative journalist, yes?
That's correct.
You write for The Rationalist?
Yes.
A magazine made to promote scientific skepticism.
And reducing the spread of pseudoscience.
And do you have a college degree?
I do not. College really wasn't for me.
You've written about many topics in your work?
Correct.
And you'll write about anything?
I would say, I write about commercial agriculture and modern agri-tech.
That's all you write about?
No, I write on a variety of subjects.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, in your journalism, you've written about Truffaut.
Correct.
And you don't believe lush fertilizer is dangerous?
No, I'm confident that it can be a game changer in modern agritech as a safe alternative to currently used fertilizers.
And you're not a scientist?
No, I'm not a scientist.
So you couldn't have researched Truffaut yourself?
Well, I've done research on Truffaut.
But you couldn't have tested it yourself?
Oh, sorry, I didn't quite understand. No, I haven't tested it myself. I've only researched what other people have done.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, you said that Lush's active ingredient is nitrogen.
One of them.
And nitrogen is known to contribute to cancer?
Correct. Virtually every commercial pesticide contains nitrogen. However, Lush doesn't contain other known carcinogens that different pesticides do, such as glyphosate and arsenic.
Thank you. And pesticide is poison?
I mean, by definition, yes.
And Truffaut is a pesticide?
No, Truffaut is a bonding agent in a pesticide.
Ms. Weirs, did you write an affidavit for this case today?
Yes, I'm sorry if you misunderstood my answer, but yes, Truffaut is in Lush fertilizer, so it would fall under a pesticide.
So Truffaut is a pesticide?
Yes, it's in pesticides.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Then the witness is excused. Thank you.
Your Honor, I've entered my scores.
Same here, Judge.
Your Honor, I've entered my scores.
And I am done scoring as well.
All right, thank you very much. The defense may call another witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Ms. Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Ms. Downcourt, I'm reminding you that you remain under the oath you took at the beginning of this session.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Good afternoon, Ms. Doncourt.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Yes, my name is Blake Doncourt. That's Doncourt.
Ms. Doncourt, what is your current occupation?
Yeah, I am currently the CEO of Lush Fertilizer Incorporated.
Do you have a lot of experience in the fertilizer industry?
Yeah, I do. I've been growing Lush for over 20 years now, and I'm really proud of what I've been able to do for the company.
Would you inform the jury of your relationship to this case?
Yes, I'm here because Lush and I are being wrongfully accused of ignoring a carcinogen in our fertilizer. Like I said, I've grown this company from the ground up, and I would never do anything to harm our customers.
Could you tell us a little bit about Lush's product?
Yeah, so Lush Fertilizer is our flagship product, and it's known to produce vibrant green grass for our customers.
And what would you say makes Lush Fertilizer different from other fertilizers?
Well, I would say it's unique because it contains an ingredient called Drufo.
What is Drufo?
Yeah, so Drufo is essentially a chemical in our fertilizer that is known to be able to help reduce nitrogen buildup in the environment. Environmentalism is really important for Lush and I, and we do our best to try to protect our planet. I do understand that Dakota believes that Drufo caused her cancer, but the studies conducted by Lush's team did not find any risks associated with the product.
Have you ever been aware of other studies that have identified risks associated with Drufo?
No, I haven't. The only study that ever seemed to find any kind of potential risk with Drufo was this study that Casey Rogers was discussing earlier. But honestly, I think the first time anybody's even heard of this study is in today's litigation.
Had you heard of Casey Rogers' study before today's lawsuit?
No, not at all.
Ms. Doncourt, did Lush test Drufo before putting it on the market?
Yes, we absolutely did. Lush's toxicology research and development lab did extensive researching and testing on the product. And our lab, as well as the EPA, did not find any specific risk with our product.
Now, as the CEO of this fertilizer company, are you aware of certain laws regarding placing warning labels on your products?
Yes, I am aware.
So when Lush put Lush fertilizer on the market, was Lush acting in compliance with state and federal laws?
Yes, 100%. And under the state and federal laws, there was no need for us to require any kind of warning labels on our products. However, as I've mentioned, and as I believe you actually saw earlier, we did put very detailed user safety recommendations on our products, just to really extra safeguard our customer safety.
Ms. Doncourt, what is your relationship to Carson Durst, who testified earlier?
Yes, Carson was a close family friend. He was actually friends with my son, Charlie. They went to Arizona State University together. And I actually ended up giving Carson a job at Lush out of college.
What was Carson's job at Lush?
So Carson began as an intern and then moved on to be a researcher. And he worked on the research and product development team. His job was essentially to find out any dangers or risks associated with using our products and follow up on them. If Carson found absolutely anything, his job was to immediately report those to Lush.
Does Carson still work at Lush?
No, he does not. Unfortunately, Carson's performance at Lush was so poor that we actually ended up having to fire him. It was actually really disappointing for me because, like I said, Carson used to be a pretty close family friend. So it was unfortunate.
So Ms. Doncourt, let's go back to before Carson was fired. When Carson was working at Lush, did Carson express any concerns about your products?
No, not at all. It wasn't until after Carson left Lush, well, after Carson was fired from Lush, that he suddenly started making all these claims about us ignoring carcinogens and ignoring information about Drufo. I feel like if Carson had had these concerns, he truly should have brought this up while working at Lush.
Was Carson the only researcher at Lush to assert these types of claims?
Yes, he was. And his claims fully contradict our other researchers' claims. As you heard Dr. Devin Williams testify, Lush's labs found no risk associated with our product.
Were there any kind of specific claims that Carson made?
Yeah, I suppose there was this one email that I believe Carson discussed earlier today.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to screen share what has previously been entered into evidence as Exhibit 4.
Granted.
Thank you, co-counsel. Ms. Doncourt, is this the email you're referring to?
Yes, it is.
And do you know what this email is?
No, not exactly. I did hear Carson talk about this email, and I can see here that I'm listed as a recipient, but I have never seen this email before this lawsuit.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, did anyone search Lush's computers during this
Yes,
investigation?
actually. Yes, the plaintiff's own lawyers searched our computers thoroughly. They didn't find this email.
Okay, so Ms. Doncourt, let's say you had received this email. What would you have done?
Well, I can see that the email seems to state potential concerns arising around carcinogens in the product. And so trust me, if I had received this email, our products would not be on the market today.
Ms. Doncourt, I'm sorry, you cut out for me. I'm not sure if that happened for everyone else. Could you
It did
just
for me.
please?
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll just do that one more time. So Ms. Doncourt, could you state one more time kind of what you would have done if you would have received this email?
Yeah, my apologies about that. Like I said, I certainly didn't receive this email, but if I had, I can see that it states concerns around carcinogens. So if I'd received this email, our products would not be on the market today. Certainly not without very substantial warning labels.
My co-counsel can now stop screen sharing this exhibit. Thank you. Ms. Doncourt, what did Carson do after he was fired?
Yeah, so he actually went to go work for Terra's Greenery, who is our biggest competitor. Then this was actually a violation of the non-compete and non-disclosure agreements that Carson signed while working at Lush. Carson went to go work for Terra's, knowing exactly how we make our products. And I actually heard that Terra was going to release a fertilizer very similar to ours shortly after Carson went to go work for them. To be quite honest, after this whole mess, I just don't feel like I can trust Carson anymore.
Ms. Doncourt, are you aware of a process called baking?
Yes. So baking is a process that can, in some cases, help to eliminate any potential risks with the fertilizer. However, my team's lab analysis and research showed that it would not make a significant difference, or any difference really, in Drufo safety.
And to reiterate, did your team find any risks associated with Lush fertilizer?
No, we did not. My team did not find any specific risks associated with Lush fertilizer. And if we had, we absolutely would have put these risks on the warning label, or not even put our products on the market. We care deeply about our customers. And so that is why we included some safety recommendations, but we would never do anything to harm our customers.
And finally, Ms. Doncourt, do you believe that your product, Lush fertilizer, caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, I absolutely do not. Lush did all of the necessary research and testing to ensure our product safety. Like I said, both the planet and people are incredibly important to Lush, and we would never do anything to jeopardize the health or safety of our customers. I do feel deeply for Dakota and the situation that he's in, but I sleep just fine at night knowing that no Lush product contributed to his condition.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jensen. You have cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to proceed?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Doncourt, you said there was no valid evidence that directly links Truffaut to cancer?
That's correct. Our team study did not find there to be any risk associated with Truffaut.
There was a link?
I'm sorry, I don't entirely understand the question.
There was a link that Truffaut causes cancer. So you studied this link?
No, there was no link between Truffaut causing cancer and in humans.
All right. There were studies about this risk?
If you're referring to Casey Rogers' study, I would consider it to be very unreliable and inconclusive. But other than that, no, there were no studies.
I'm referring to the studies your company did about the potential risk that Truffaut causes cancer.
Right. Yeah, our studies did our labs did extensive research and studies, and they did not find Truffaut to be any kind of cancerous risk.
Let's shift gears and discuss Carson Durst. You called Carson Durst a regrettable disappointment.
Unfortunately, yes. Carson really did used to be a close family friend and somebody I trusted. And so I was disappointed by his poor performance and lack of work ethic at Lush.
You were angry when Carson Durst went to work for your rival.
Of course, it was a violation of our legal agreements, and it wasn't right of him to do.
And if Terra Greenery would learn your trade secrets, Lush would be hurt financially.
I mean, of course, I would prefer our competitors to not be making the exact same products as us, but unfortunately, Carson went and broke the agreement, like I said.
You said Carson Durst was earning more than any researcher should earn.
I would believe so, potentially. I don't know his exact earnings, but I would say that that's likely the case.
And more than Lush could afford to pay?
Again, I don't know Carson's exact earnings. I don't have a report of his paycheck, but I believe that would be likely the case.
Next, Ms. Doncourt, let's talk about Lush. You are the CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, I've worked with Lush for over 20 years. I'm very proud of the work we do, and I've really built this company from the ground up.
You're responsible for your employees?
As CEO, yes, I would say that.
You said Mr. Durst did not do his job.
No, and like I said, eventually we had to fire him because of it.
While he was under your supervision?
Once again, that is why we fired him. He wasn't doing his job the way he should have been.
Moving on. You would never intentionally harm other human beings, correct?
Of course not. No, I wouldn't.
And you knew that baking the fertilizer would remove any risk of its causing cancer.
Right, but like I said, our labs did not find Drufo to be a specific risk to anybody coming in contact with the product, so it was simply overkill.
But you would never even negligently harm other human beings?
As I've already said, of course I wouldn't harm other human beings. Don't think anybody would want to do that.
But you didn't bake the fertilizer.
I didn't bake the fertilizer as it wasn't necessary in increasing our product safety. Drufo was very safe without it.
Because it costs too much?
My apologies. I didn't quite catch that. Sorry.
You didn't bake the fertilizer because it costs too much?
Right, and it would essentially be overkill as it wouldn't really help to eliminate any significant risk. Our product was very safe without the baking.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. The citizen, is there any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just one question. Ms. Doncourt, could you just reiterate why your company made the decision not to bake its fertilizer?
Yes, of course. So like I've said, our research teams found that Drufo and our fertilizer was not any specific risk to our customers and did not carry carcinogenic qualities. So it would have been simply overkill and unnecessary to bake our products.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Then the witness is excused.
Your Honor, I have completed scoring.
As have I, Your Honor.
Me also, Your Honor.
I have also, Your Honor.
All right, thank you very much. Does the defense have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Thank you. The plaintiff at this point may make its closing argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I begin?
Yes, you may.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Lush Fertilizer ruined Dakota Weir's life because Lush was negligent. Jury Instruction 2 states that since we have proven that Lush manufactured a product containing Drufo, since we have proven that Lush Fertilizer was negligent and failed to protect its users, since we have proven that Mr. Weirs in his job should have been reasonably expected to use Lush Fertilizer, and since we have proven that Lush Fertilizer was most certainly the cause of Mr. Weir's cancer, your verdict must be, jury members, for Dakota Weirs. Number 1, we have proven that Lush Fertilizer contains Drufo. Not only have we shown you physical evidence, but you have heard the sworn testimony of many, including the CEO of Lush itself, tell you that it does. Number 2, we have proven that the defendant was negligent and failed to exercise reasonable care to protect its users from any harm its product might cause to them. There was no warning about Drufo on Lush Fertilizer's packaging, no warning that Lush Fertilizer contained a bonding agent, outlawed in other countries for its risk to users. Dakota Weirs is not the only one who has been exposed to Drufo and become sick from it. No, Casey Rogers, in fact, informed us that those exposed to Drufo are 10 times more likely to develop cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, than those who aren't. Many have been adversely affected by Lush Fertilizer. In fact, Lush's own studies found that not only may Drufo contain a known carcinogen, but one linked specifically to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and yet Lush decided it wasn't a problem. Lush Fertilizer knew full well that their product posed a risk to users, and yet failed to continue studies or even pose a sufficient warning. Lush knew there was a reasonable chance that Drufo causes cancer, and yet they failed to exercise reasonable care to prevent it from causing harm to Mr. Weirs and others. They chose not to bake their fertilizer, which would have removed any risk that it was carcinogenic and dangerous to the public. They did not do any more studies. They did not even bother to issue a warning. Lush Fertilizer did not want to take the time or spend the money to research even a moment more to keep Mr. Weirs and others safe. In fact, even the defendant's witnesses tell us that Drufo is dangerous. Skylar Weirs told us that Drufo's main ingredient is nitrogen, known to contribute to cancer. Told us that Drufo is a pesticide, and what were her own words? Pesticide is, by definition, poison. But Lush didn't think to put a sufficient warning on the packaging. We have proven that Lush was negligent. Number 3, we have proven that Mr. Weirs, working every day in a landscaping job where Lush fertilizer was used, should have reasonably been expected to use the product at his job. Number 4, finally, we have proven that Mr. Weir's cause of his cancer was most certainly Lush fertilizer. There were other workers at Mr. Weir's job, and yet Dakota Weirs, using Lush fertilizer, developed cancer. Other than work, Mr. Weirs and his twin, Skylar Weirs, lived in the same environment, and yet Dakota Weirs, using Lush fertilizer, developed cancer. If Lush fertilizer had thought to put a warning about Drufo's dangers on their packaging, Mr. Weirs could have avoided all of this, and yet Mr. Weirs, using Lush fertilizer, developed cancer. Lush fertilizer claims that the risk a known carcinogen would pose was low, that there was no specific risk that Drufo caused. They never said there was no carcinogen, and they never said there was no risk. All they could tell us was that they had no conclusive studies. But that's not exactly true, is it? They didn't like the results from the first studies, so they reassigned anyone from the first study and started over with new checks. When presented with a low-cost way to eliminate any risk to bake their fertilizer, they ignored the right science and decided it was too costly to bother. Mr. Weirs, because of Lush fertilizer's negligence, developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that will not allow him to live his life. He can no longer be the active student he was, can no longer participate in volunteering at the homeless shelter, can no longer even do something so simple, so fundamental to his life as playing the piano anymore. Because of Lush fertilizer, because of Lush's negligence, Dakota Weirs suffers at home instead of going to Juilliard, constantly in pain, no longer able to even sit without experiencing pain and fatigue and bruising. Lush fertilizer took everything from Dakota. Living as it was has become impossible. Playing even the shortest concerto because of them has become impossible. Lush fertilizer was negligent, and because of that, jury members, your verdict must be for Dakota Weirs. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Timekeeper, what time is remaining on the plaintiff's closing?
She went right to the ending point, so there's no time left.
There's no time left? All right, thank you. Defense, your closing argument, please.
Plaintiff is using the wrong science and now suing the wrong defendant. It's time for the right answer. Wrong science, wrong defendant, right answer. Let's take a look at the science that opposing counsel presented today. In an effort to prove that a chemical called Drufo caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, plaintiff is relying on a study conducted by Casey Rogers, a study that Rogers herself testified was partially inconclusive. Now, the only other science that opposing counsel presented today was an email that Carson Durst, a disgruntled ex-employee, claims to have received. Now, this alleged email seems to state that Drufo may be carcinogenic, but members of the jury, no one else has ever seen this email. So we have an inconclusive study and an email that no one else has ever seen. That's the wrong science, members of the jury. But my co-counsel and I called witnesses to the stand that presented the right science. Dr. Devin Williams testified that her labs found no evidence that Drufo could cause cancer. Skylar Weirs testified that in her extensive research, she has never come across a single credible study that links Drufo to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So let's use the right science in the development of Drufo. Now, members of the jury, not only is plaintiff using the wrong science, but he is now suing the wrong defendant. I would like to remind you that Mr. Dakota Weirs himself testified today that he is not sure whether or not Lush fertilizer caused his cancer. Again, the plaintiff himself testified that he is not sure here in court today. We do not know who the real party or parties at fault are, but we do know that that party is not Lush. So who or what else could have caused this cancer? Well, Mr. Weirs testified that he used multiple different fertilizers at his job. A different fertilizer could easily be at fault. And members of the jury, it has not been proven here today that a fertilizer caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Something else entirely could be at fault. Wrong science, wrong defendant. Let's talk about the right answer that you must now give. Today, opposing counsel failed to meet their burden to prove each element of negligence by a preponderance of the evidence. Therefore, your verdict must be for the defendant. The evidence today showed that Lush exercised reasonable care to prevent its product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm. However, if you do find that Dakota Weirs suffered damages as a result of using Lush fertilizer, you must then consider Dakota's own negligence. Dakota used a product that was not supposed to be used by minors and failed to heed Lush's very clear instructions to wear protective gear. Wearing protective gear while using chemicals is something that reasonably careful people would do under the same circumstances to protect themselves. If Dakota suffered any damages as a result of using this product, 100% of those damages were caused by this conduct. Now, opposing counsel called Lush greedy today and tried to argue that Lush did not bake its fertilizer because the company could save money. But the truth is that Lush did not bake its fertilizer for the simple reason that it was not necessary. Lush's research team had already demonstrated that the product was safe. And despite finding no risks, Lush still put detailed safety recommendations on its product because the company cares so deeply about each one of its customers. That, members of the jury, is the opposite of greed. Opposing counsel is also trying to argue that because Lush did not bake its fertilizer, Lush failed to eliminate all reasonable risk. But I need to make one thing clear. Eliminating all reasonable risk does not mean eliminating 100% of risk. Finally, opposing counsel is arguing that Lush was deceitful because the company did not put cancer on the warning label. But this was not deceit. Lush did not put cancer on the warning label because the product does not cause cancer. For that reason, we ask you to find Lush not liable for negligence. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. The timekeepers say that there is no time for rebuttal. Therefore, the case will stand submitted, and the scoring panelists should complete their scorecards and turn them in.
I'm done, Judge.
All right, thank you.
I am done, Your Honor.
Thank you. You've all put your telephone numbers on the scorecards as requested?
Yes, I did.
Good.
Yes, sir.
I have submitted mine as well, Your Honor.
And thank you.
I have submitted mine as well, Your Honor.
Okay, good. I guess we have to, scoring panelists hang around a little bit until we have confirmation from the central office that they have been received. And in the meantime, I'd like to congratulate all of the participants in this round. I thought it was a very interesting presentation of this problem, and I enjoyed it very much. If you would like, the scoring panelists can give you a couple of minutes of feedback while we wait on confirmation. And I'm going to be timing the scoring panelists. When I say 2 minutes, I mean 2 minutes. So have at it if you'd like.
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and I'll start. I'll initially say it's no wonder that both of these teams are where they are at in this competition, because both teams did put up very solid and very excellent presentations. I would even go so far as to commend you for dealing with that added layer of having this be done via Zoom, because I'll say from experience, it's a lot easier to communicate and connect with juries and witnesses when you have real eye-to-eye contact. But even with that, you all did a very, very good job. So my compliments to both teams.
All right, thank you.
If I may, I would be happy to co-counsel a case with anyone I saw compete here today. You guys are better than a few attorneys I know, but pursue your dreams, and I think any of you could have a good career in law. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll simply echo what my fellow panelists have said. Congratulations for making it this far. You all did very well today. I'll go ahead and say that the witnesses, particularly for the defense, I will tell you, you guys did a fantastic job as witnesses. So just kudos to that, but everyone did a great job today.
Thank you.
I'll just echo what everyone else said. I was so impressed by all of you. You were so professional, and it was really fun to watch. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll ask the courtroom.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're dismissed. They do have all of the score sheets.
All right, that was my question. So thank you very much, and congratulations to all of you. Good luck in the rest of the competition. And y'all can sign off now. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good job, Team Andy.